Hi, welcome back to another Econ podcast with Mr. Hagan. On this Econ podcast, we continue to talk about the different theories of investing. Please remember that this video is not designed to give investment advice for educational purposes only. This video and other videos in this playlist are designed to teach about different theories of investing. If you want investment advice, please see a professional. All right, so on some previous videos, we were talking about the random walk theory. And the random walk theory says to diversify your portfolio. It says to invest for the long run. We'll come back to those concepts later on some future videos. But it also says that you should try to keep your fees low. Keep your fees low. And we looked at one fee to keep low, and that is paying a load, the concept of paying a load. We talked about this on a previous video, and we said that the random walk guys prefer no load mutual fund companies because you'll end up with more money in your pocket at the end of 30 years than if you had to pay a load. Okay. You ended up, in this example we did in the previous video, you ended up with almost $100,000 more because of investing in a no load fund instead of investing in a load fund. Okay. That was the argument that we looked at with regards to keeping your fees low. Well, the other thing that you want to keep low would be taxes. So let's take a look at taxes. So from a random walk perspective, you want to try to keep your tax bill low, because the more money you keep, obviously the more money then that's yours. If you earned it but you didn't keep it, then was it really worth it? So we want to look at not just your total return, but what we're going to call your after-tax total return. How much money did you actually get to keep after paying taxes? So you're on the money that you earn in a mutual fund. Your total return will include dividends that you get paid and capital gains that you get paid. We talked about those all in previous videos. Okay, but you don't get to keep all of that, because there are dividend taxes and there are capital gains taxes. Now, I'm tentative to even show these numbers down below. I'm going to, but I'm tentative because you got to remember that these numbers, they change. Okay? And taxes are never as easy as just stating what the tax rate is. So you have to see a tax professional when it comes to managing your taxes. So I'm just talking in very broad brushes. I'm doing this video in 2020. And if somebody is in the 10 to 12% tax bracket for income, then their capital gains tax is going to be zero. Okay. So that's great for people who are in those brackets. But a lot of people are in higher income tax brackets, like in the 22% tax bracket or higher. And if that's the case, then which is going to be a lot of people who are investors, their capital gains are going to get taxed at 15%, and their dividends are going to get taxed at 15%. Okay, but that depends on a whole lot of other different things. Okay, so don't go making investment tax decisions based on these numbers here in this video. You got to see a tax professional about this stuff. In addition to that, the Obama healthcare law, I think it was in the Obama healthcare law. I might be wrong about that, but I think it was in that law that it placed a new investment tax of 3.8% on couples earning over $250,000. Okay. And again, that's years ago, so that number may have changed. I'm not sure. So that's why I'm tentative to give these numbers. I'm using these numbers more as examples because these numbers are always changing. Tax law is always changing. Now, what we want to do as investors is we would like to pay whatever these tax rates are, 15%, whatever it is. We want to keep this tax rate as low as possible. And you would say, well, Hagan, how can we keep that tax bill as low as possible? Well, there are ways to avoid paying these taxes, or at least putting these taxes off to the future. There are ways to do that we're going to look at. We're not going to look at those strategies right now. Instead, what we're going to look at right now is just how big of a difference does it make in how much money you get, how much money you earn as an investor. How much of a difference does it make if you could somehow avoid paying these taxes, or if you could pay less in taxes? So we want to look at some of the mathematics behind this. And I don't want to get crazy about the math here, because you could really get into a lot of math. So I don't want to get crazy about it, but I just want to look at some of the very basics here with some of the mathematics. So the normal formula that we use, that we've talked about before, is P times 1 plus R to the T. Okay, where we take the principal times 1 plus our rate of return raised to the number of years that we invest. Okay. This R here is going to be the key to our discussion right now. So let's say the R is 10%. Let's say that you're earning 10% per year on your investments. If you're earning 10% per year, 10%, we write that as a decimal. We write that as 0.1. And so when we write this formula, P times 1 plus R to the T, it would be P times whatever our principal is, times 1.1 raised to the number of years, raised to the T power, whatever that is. Okay. Now, because if we do have to pay a 15% capital gains and dividends tax, if we have to pay that, then we're not actually going to earn 10% per year. This R is not actually going to be 10%. It's going to be somewhat lower than that. So to figure out what that's going to be, we're going to call that the after-tax total return. What is your total return after you pay your taxes? What do you actually get to keep of your total return? So let's take our 10% total return. Okay, let's take our 10% total return. And I'm not going to bother writing the percent sign when I do this. So I'm going to take my 10% total return times, that's my total return, 10%, times 1 minus my tax rate. So it's going to be 1 minus my tax rate. Let's assume the tax rates are 15%. Assume that these numbers that I put here are correct. Okay, and that the tax rate is 15%. So I write that as 0.15. So now my 10% total return is going to be 10% total return times 0.85. That's 1 minus the 0.15. So what that means is this is my tax rate on my dividends and capital gains. This is what I actually get to keep. Of my 10% return, I only get to keep 85% of that 10% every year. The other 15% is going to pay the tax man. Okay? I told you this math gets a little crazy. So that means that I only get to keep 8.5% per year. So instead of my R being 10%, my R is now 8.5%. I only earn 8.5% per year. The other 1.5% is going to the government in the form of dividends and capital gains taxes. Okay? So this my R is my total return. These are the same thing. This TR right here, total return, that is the R right here. That was the 10%. My after-tax total return is the total return that I get to keep after paying my taxes. So my total return was 10%, but my after-tax total return was only 8.5%. So my new formula would be, instead of P times 1.1 to the T, my new formula would be P times 1.085. That's writing 8.5% as a decimal raised to the number of years. Okay? That would be the new formula, so that I'm only getting an 8.5% return here instead of a 10% return. Okay, I'm going to stop there talking about taxes. On a future video, I'm going to do an actual example here and look at the numbers. But this is what happens when you have to pay taxes. When you have to pay taxes, that means that you're going to keep less in your investments. You're going to earn less in your investments because you're going to have to pay some of that money to taxes. So the question then is going to become, how can we lower that tax rate so that we actually get to keep more over here of what we invest. Okay, we'll talk about that on some future videos. All right, this has been Mr. Hagan on another Econ podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next Econ podcast.